And welcome back once again. We are now going to go ahead and create the last cycle here, which is our idle cycle here. So we, of course, have our first cycle that we created, which is our running cycle. We have our jump cycle that we created here. And now we're going to go ahead and create an idle cycle, which is what happens, for example, if your character is not moving, what kind of animation do we want them to do if they're just standing still, for example. So let's go ahead and just make a copy of our jump one here. So we're going to go to File and Save a Copy. And I'm just going to go ahead and rename this to character-idle. And let's go ahead and open up that file. So here's my character idle. Here he is. Zoom him in. Now notice he does have all the other layers that existed. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the two jump animations here. And I'm going to go ahead and start with my sprite layer that we originally started with. And I'm going to go ahead again and clean up these frames that I don't need here. We will, of course, add them back in later. But here we are. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start this as my first frame here. So this will be our kind of default stance that this character is going to take. So effectively this is our first idle layer. So let's make this idle 1. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and duplicate that layer and make idle 2. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make it so that his body slouches just a little bit. Let's go ahead and start first with our arms. And so I'm just going to select the arms using my move tool. I'm just going to go ahead and tap that down one and make sure I hide idle 1. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side of the body. So go ahead and deselect that. Select this layer here. And again, using my move tool, I'm going to tap that down 1 pixel. All right. And even if I were to just alternate between these two layers here, you can kind of see what will happen already is pretty much his arms are going to shrug up and down. Now, that's pretty cool. We could also make it so, for example, his knees bend a little bit here too. So maybe we want that to be another frame of animation. So I can go ahead and duplicate this, make idle 3. And all I'm going to do, deselect that current layer. And let's go ahead and take his whole body now at the knee level. And I'm just going to go ahead and I can animate this so that he is moving up and down 1 pixel, for example. Now I don't necessarily want to get rid of his knees here, so I can, of course, drop this down so that way he is inside of that layer here. So, for example, if I do this and hit move down 1, now we, of course, have him kind of bending himself at the knees. And that could make, of course, another idle animation here. And let's just see how this looks right now with just these 3 poses here. So if I go ahead and make a quick 3-frame animation here, and let's do idle 1, idle 2, and, of course, idle 3. And give that a quick save. And if I run through that, of course, we can see that he now has some movement here. Now, of course, this may not be perfect for what we want. We could, of course, decide how we want to do other things. But, of course, this does give us kind of some quick idle animation poses, and we can come through and do fine-tuning with different things. Now, one thing we do notice right away, of course, is we haven't altered our flame yet. And, of course, that is the challenge I'm going to leave you with. Go ahead and alter this flame. You might want to key up this. Maybe you want him to bend his legs the same time his arms are bending, for example. So you might say, idle 3 is really good, but idle 2 doesn't quite meet what I want to do because I want those legs to work at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of idle 3, make the idle 2. And so now when I delete that frame, I just have a 2-frame animation. And if I play that, now we have his arms and his legs kind of moving at the same time. But of course, we still need to address that flame. So again, I'm going to leave you with this challenge here today, a quick one. And just go ahead and animate this here. And now, of course, you can, create additional idle frames here. You can have his arms swing maybe. You can do all sorts of other things. But at the very minimum, we want at least 2 frames here of animation for this idle character. But again, let's go ahead and touch that flame and let's see what you create for your idle. All right, and so we, of course, have created a new animation here. And if we go ahead and run our character, you can see now he has our kind of idle pose here where he is moving. It looks like I accidentally created a white pixel here, but that's not a problem. We can easily erase that. Just grab our old eraser tool and erase that out of there. Perfect. There we go. Now we have a nice idle animation to kind of go along with our other characters. And so you can quickly see how we can start animating things for different poses. Obviously, there are other things that you can do besides simply running, jumping, and an idle pose. But this should give you a good foundation for moving into other things that you might want to do with characters. Now, there are some other little touch-up things that we are going to do with our characters before we go ahead and take these different animations, for example, and dump them all into a sprite sheet, which we are very familiar with this point at being able to do. But before we do that, again, there's a little bit of touch-up that we want to do with these characters, so we'll take and tackle that next time. Particularly, the thing we want to focus on next time is this torch. Now, up to this point, we have been trying to make some nice color changes and variations, but there's a little techniques and little tricks we can do in Photoshop here to really kind of take this to the next level. So that way, for example, if this was against a black background here, this could really stand out rather than simply just looking like a blob of color. So we'll take a look at that next time, and then we'll be ready to put these characters into a sprite sheet.